doesn't like to get greased up with their bros?
Hey there, party people, and welcome to People Stuff, a weekly anthropological advice show hosted by me, Michael, and my colleague Dan. Remember, we're anthropologists and we know stuff about people.
People stuff.
This week, we're talking about violence. Violence with swords, violence with horses, and violence as a means of disciplining people. If you can hit it, we're not quite quitting it this week.
Boo! So every time I think about violence, I start obviously anthropologically. And the observations are basically, first, it's never random. Like, random violence isn't a thing. There's always some audience that it's meant for, and there's always some social context it's happening in. And second, violence as a means of control, political, personal, hitting someone to make them do something, is a form of politics where the person doing the hitting doesn't have to care what the person on the receiving end of the hitting is thinking. So there's always this seductive, cruel, sociopathic efficiency at the root of solving things with violence that distinguishes it from other ways of getting people to do shit.
Oh, I don't know about that. What the person on the receiving end is thinking, I know when I inflict violence on someone, what I want them to think is, I better not piss this person off again.
Yeah, you want them to think that, but you don't give a shit about how they feel about it.
How they feel about it. They should feel submissive.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Affect. Okay. Well, that's enough rambling from you. Don't you
know?
Oh,
you rambled too.
Don't you? Yes, but this is a Michael episode and I'm introducing everything. Thus is my right to ramble.
People Stuff Nation, I'm really sorry that, again, you have to put up with this.
Yes, such as it is. Don't you know we have a guest this week? We are delighted to welcome to People Stuff Scott Freeman.
Yeah!
An anthropologist and assistant professor in the School of International Service at American University. Scott has done a ton of fieldwork in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and elsewhere. Scott, welcome. And would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
Line. Okay.
No, great. I'll decline. No,
I'm a cipher. I tell you nothing.
I like to banter. I study development aid, agriculture, environment stuff, and I do that mostly in Haiti. So I spend my time walking in the hills with Haitian farmers, with NGO employees sitting in offices and listening to relatively boring meetings, and I write about aid bureaucracy and how
So you prefer the hills to the offices?
Oh, 100%. No question.
Meetings are terrible.
No, I mean, but they add necessary context for how people think, right? It's a really great place to see how people do their think and their work, but I'd much rather be out. I'd much rather be out in the hillside. So I do that. And I've been looking at land grabs in Haiti more recently and working with collaborators there and lawyers on remedy and prevention of land grabs. So, and I actually also do some work in Costa Rica on pineapples. So I stay busy.
Pineapples.
Yeah.
Say more.
Well, I've been leading groups of students. I've done like 5 years where we go and we work and do field methods with folks who are ticked off about this spread of the pineapple plantations in Southwest Costa Rica. So like if you're eating a pineapple in the United States, like 99% chance it's coming from Costa Rica.
And for the naive listener, why would someone not want pineapples growing?
Oh man, I tell you, it's like these are just giant like green deserts of pineapple that, go as far as the eye can see. They take tons of water, tons of pesticides, crappy labor practices, you name it, right? Bad runoff stuff. So anyway, so we've been working on that for a while. So it does make you think twice about the delicious, juicy pineapple that you eat.
People Stuff, taking pineapples out of the canteen.
Yeah, making stuff less fun.
Now that you've just ruined pineapples for me, Scott, what else are you going to ruin for us?
Don't ask him about avocados. Trust me.
No, I know about avocados. I don't have to ask him about
it's the
avocados.
same thing, same stuff.
Yeah.
Is there more or less organized crime with pineapples as with avocados?
Scott, you've got a problem with monoculture.
That is exactly right.
And cash cropping for agriculture.
Plantations, industrial agriculture. Yeah, I got a lot. I got some
Scott,
stuff to
anti-agriculture, perhaps anti-American.
This is
Despite working at American University, Scott.
A bitter
Throwing
irony.
the name back at me. That's
more like
right.
Anti-American University.
Anti-American at university.
Wow.
That's right.
That's
right.
Scott, you seem like a highly trained, highly competent researcher who has many controversial opinions about fruit. Why on earth would you want to come on this podcast?
How could I pass up an anthro podcast? I think it's probably the one place where I can drone on about anthropology without family and friends rolling their eyes at me. Maybe it's just like a larger public. Yeah, a larger public rolling their eyes.
Scott Freeman coming on People Stuff to avoid his family.
Yes. Scott Freeman, anti-American, anti-family. We'll never get you. You're never going to get elected.
What doesn't
after this.
Scott hate?
Hearing it here first.
You're hearing it here first. I bet he doesn't even live in America. Well, as per tradition, we start every episode with an anthropological reflection on some fresh hell. Dan, what fresh hell is on your mind?
Michael, linguistic innovation, specifically Utah mom names.
Linguistic innovation is awesome, not a fresh hell.
Well, we tend to categorize everything as hell, kind of in
true.
an existentialist way on this podcast.
True.
So if hell is other people, then anthropology is hell, and everything we talk about is anthropology. So linguistic innovation, Michael.
Real uplifting.
Okay, real uplifting start to this podcast. Don't eat pineapples. Everything is hell. You're really, really
This is the
Dan.
violence podcast. I don't know what you want.
No, the truth. True to.
We're not
Fair
in person
enough,
with
on
each other,
topic.
so all the violence must be verbal and symbolic.
Okay.
So linguistic innovation, Michael, that is the fresh hell. Specifically, Utah mom names. Over the last decade or two, I'd noticed a rise in white-sounding mishmash names that were spelled unorthodoxly. Names like Taylor, McCarty, Navy, Nayvie, Maley, Lakin, and then there's Ashley, but it's spelled E-I-G-H.
Like Ashley? Like
yeah,
Ashley,
or
like
Bradley, spelled with E-I-G-H at the end of this.
Ah, yes.
So I'd noticed these, but I'd never had a name for it until I read that Vox article that you're about to make fun of me for that named them Utah mom names. And apparently it started as a meme with a blonde, white, pregnant lady standing in front of a chalkboard with all these E-I-G-H names working through them and then circling the future name of the kid. And the other thing that's interesting to me about, and I think this is like an interesting case study in linguistic innovation, is the way that it's been received. And there's actually like a Reddit thread called r/tragedy, but it's spelled E-I-G-H, which
Oh God,
I thought was very
You can always
cute.
count on Reddit for a good one. Yeah.
So it seems like insofar as anyone reacts to this, they're either neutral or hostile to these new names. And like that often goes with linguistic innovation because it tends to come from younger women.
Oh, well, this is what you know about Utah moms? I mean, do you get all your pop culture knowledge from The Atlantic or Vox or worse, The New Yorker?
Michael, I do not read The Atlantic. Thank you very much.
Okay, too down market for you. But you do read The New Yorker, don't you?
Yeah, and I kind of enjoy it.
Okay, listen. Linguistic swerves are about the least interesting thing about Utah moms. These influencers are not just linguistic innovators and a direct pipeline to Tradwife nostalgia. Have you heard of this Tradwife thing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They're not real. You can't be a Tradwife and have a multi-million-dollar public business. Tradwives don't exist. I'm a Tradwife truther.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not going to argue that. But these
No,
Utah
go to the
moms
mat for Tradwives. Tell me about the ballerina farm.
I'm not. I'm just going to tell you that they're also at the forefront of a sexual revolution of sorts. Have you seen The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives? Or is that too
I have
lowbrow
not,
for
Michael.
your
Tell
highbrow
the
taste?
audience about
I
this.
want to hear more about this.
Well, it's a reality show about the secret lives of Mormon wives, a group of mommy influencers from Utah who got really into swinging and got excommunicated from the Mormon church.
Wow.
And so, they started
Was this before or after the show
influence
started?
different types of activity other than linguistic innovation. Yeah.
So wait, did they start swinging before or after they had their show?
After they met.
Oh, so they were like, this show is boring. What can we do?
Yeah.
Let's start
It might have
swinging.
been before. I don't know. Honestly, I only watched a half episode and I couldn't get through it. I can't. I am a committed.
I'm the highbrow, but
Right.
Michael can't even make it through an
can't even
episode
do
of The
it. No,
Secret
it's true.
Lives of Mormon
Oh.
Wives.
Look, man, I am a committed reader of the New York Review of Books. Okay, so I'm gonna try to claw back this elitist ground from you.
Oh, God.
Michael was a man of the people for like 2 seconds.
Well, half an
Till
episode.
the second commercial
Well,
break.
the New York
Half an
Review of
episode.
Books had this to say about the Mormon sexual revolution.
I think there was an article about the Mormon sexual revolution, but anyways, be that as it may, remember we're anthropologists. and
No,
we know
I want to
stuff.
hear Scott weigh in on this. Scott, you got anything to say about
Oh.
the Mormon names?
I mean, I'm just more fascinated now. I like want to go check out this show. I think you're right. There's this. I've scrolled through the tragedy Reddit thread, and you're right. It's most like it's a mocking. It's like a mocking tone to it, right? And I think that's sort of spot on. Like that's not well received. But now I do feel like that's the least exciting thing coming out of like the sort of pop culture references to Utah, and I want to watch this.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Well,
it's fantastic.
We'll have you on next week for your recap.
I mean, I have to say, though, the reason I only got through half an episode is that I'm kind of jaded about these influencer tell-all shows because I live in LA, and I actually used to live next to a house full of influencers, and believe me, it's not as fun as it looks.
Can you get them
it's
to
like
boost
super
the
curated,
podcast, Michael?
Huh? Well,
Can you get them
both
to boost
talked
the
at
podcast?
exactly the same time.
Scott,
First
go first.
Scott.
No,
Yeah,
I said it seems super curated, right? Like,
oh God, yeah. So
like the
annoying.
idea of reality. I mean, right? The idea of this being reality TV is the facade.
Oh, it's a
right?
joke, right? It's heavily scripted.
Well, so then this is really the more interesting thing is not that this is actually going on in Utah. It's that the idea for making this a mass market reality TV show is playing off of the idea of some sort of traditional values that exist in Mormon Utah. And twisting it and adding this like sexual element to it,
that's
right?
capitalism, right? Any traditional value can be suddenly turned into a commodity via social media. I mean,